keep things secure there. And in addition to that, he's known as a SCADA expert, and he is also a SANS GSE. He's got more certifications than Quaker's got oats. I'm not going to read this whole paragraph of certifications, but trust me, he's got a long list of certifications from SANS, as well as the GSE that I think less than 107 people in the world have. He's one of them. So please help me welcome Russ, our next speaker.
Whatever you need, Adrian. Getting no signal?
No signal, no. Try this again.
Can you look? Can you guys hear me okay?
I got the signal now, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. So today's speech is going to be a little bit different. And, Paul talks about my technical background, and that's what I enjoy doing. But sadly, that's not what I actually do for a day job most of the time these days. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do, what I have done. In the past, I've worked in education environment, which is a very interesting, hostile environment. Worked back in the days before we had firewalls on universities, which is a very interesting aspect because if you can't protect yourself with firewall at least, what are you going to do? You have no boundary whatsoever. And it would come up through that stage, and then I left education and went to DoD world and did assessments for a lot of people who are here in the room. Did a lot of incident handling, a lot of forensics work with the federal government. My areas of focus are securing unsecurable, which is an interesting topic. And apparently I jammed the laser pointer. Okay, great, sorry. So securing the unsecurable, that's kind of really a misnomer. But what I really mean by that, and that's what I was doing in DoD world, is what does DISA not know how to secure? What do they not put out STIGs that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, security technical implementation guides? What do they not know how to secure? What do they not tell you how to secure by checking these checkboxes in an order? And that's what I've spent a lot of time looking at. SCADA and industrial controls fall a lot into that because there's a new world you have to think about. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to handle it? And start getting back to the roots of what is security, not just reading that last report and this is how I secure Windows XP or Windows 2, Windows 7, Windows 8, and actually having a full checkbox list for it. So as Paul said, I've done a lot of SCADA/ICS work. I've also done a lot of high-performance computing. I don't know how much you're familiar with high-performance computing, but the organization I worked for, I seem to do bad things with laser pointers, sorry. The HPCMPO, it's a High Performance Computing Modernization Program Office, and inside of that we ran the high-performance computers for DoD world. So anything that would do modeling, simulation, and DoD side, we were running there. HPCs are very interesting. It's a lot like SCADA, ICS type world where you have to figure out and make the rules on how you're going to secure these things. You secure your boundary, but is securing your boundary good enough? A lot of people in the past would say yes. Nowadays, do you think it is? Do you trust all your users? If they have access to your juicy inside, what can they do to you? So how do you handle that world? Forensics, I used to do a lot of forensics trainings for law enforcement, a couple that are in here in the room. We've trained in computer forensics, and just basis of what you do with it, education and research side. That all being said, this presentation, like I said, I hope you're not looking for a strong technical presentation because it's certainly not that. It's where I've changed my mindset to where the real problem is and how we fix the real problem. So back in the past, we had this castle model. Everybody talks about security as this castle, right? You build your outer wall, you build your inner wall. That's great, right? But this is our one internet connection. Is that how we are these days? I mean, what industry or what company here has one connection in and out these days? Instead, and I thought about redrawing this, but I've never gotten around to it, drawing moats all the way around. How do you protect it when there's 100,000 moats? Oh, and there's a guy over here using wireless and has a wireless moat going back and forth. How do you control that? What do you do with those? How many people have hotspots on their phones, walk into your corporate environment, and still use that network? How do you protect in that mode? How do you protect when they can walk in with their own laptop and be able to connect up? One of the things I found very interesting in the past is this was a survey done of government sector. I'm going to focus a little bit on government right now. Where are your biggest security concerns for 2007? What I found very interesting is this 29% of meeting the compliance requirements. How many times have you seen a computer hacked because it didn't meet the compliance requirements? You know, you have to do those things because they're the bare minimum, but is that where to stop? Cloud computing. You know, I hope that number is a whole lot higher right now, right? In our industries, who isn't using cloud services right now? Advanced persistent threats, 17% of a concern. That's a big concern for me, but how do you actually put a number to that? I don't know the answer to that. Because how do you know if it's going on? You can only detect what you can detect. Mobile devices, again, I think it's probably gone up. What I found very interesting from this chart was social media and web application vulnerabilities. Is social media really 2% of your concern? These days, I hope not. Web application vulnerabilities, 8% of the concern. I bet it's a whole lot higher for them now. I hope it is. I haven't found an updated survey of them, but hopefully it is. And this is going to be somewhat of death by PowerPoint on statistics. Sorry for that. We won't cover every single one of them, but some interesting facts to talk about. 91% increase of targeted attacks from campaign from 2013. This is from a 2014 semantic threat report. So they're saying 91% increase from one year to the next. Is that really a 91% increase, or is it just more visibility? Because how can you say how bad things are unless you have the visibility to know it? And that's a very hard thing to know. 62% of increases in the breaches in the U.S. What do you think that number is now? It's going to keep going, right? We don't have 2014 to 2015 data yet, but I think the numbers will keep going up. This next fact is a very interesting one I found. 552 million identities were exposed in breaches in 2013. That is a number that's worldwide, but there's only 316 million people in the U.S. So if you start thinking about it, the number of people in the world, of course, there's a lot greater when you start talking about other places like China, but still, that's a huge number. It's a very huge number to think about. 23 zero-day vulnerabilities discovered. Does anybody in the room believe that number? That happened in 2014, 2013? I don't believe that number, because if there's 0 day, how do you account for it? How do you know? How many 0 days are out there right now? How can we know? You know, because every attacker who actually really has a 0 day, going to step up and say, hey, I have a 0 day, so count mine in there too. They're not going to, because they want to keep it as a 0 day. Once it's known, it's no longer a 0 day. So where do you go with that? 38% of mobile users have experienced cybercrime in the last 12 months. I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting number. It seems reasonable, but who knows? Spam, again, there's a whole lot of spam out there, right? Dropped the volume to 66% from the previous year. It's an improvement, but not great. Phishing attacks, you know, they happen all the time, right? These numbers here are actually what UAH saw for emails that year. So it gives you an idea of how many were spam. Out of 44.6 million emails, if you go by these numbers, 29.44 million spam emails. That's a lot of email. You know, same thing with phishing. Same amount of emails, almost 114,000 were phishing. Web attacks are up 23%. This falls in the same category to me as this 23 0 day. These are known attacks. How many unknown are there? What are you seeing otherwise? 1 in 8 legitimate websites have a critical vulnerability. Again, that's what they know of vulnerability-wise. How many vulnerabilities are not there that we don't know of? That falls back to the 0 day category. If it's 0 day against a website, it's not counted here. So what's the real number? These are minimum numbers. That's a really scary fact to think about. These are interesting charts. I threw it up during the break a few minutes ago, but my son, you know, you want to use the things you learn in school, right? My son's a second grader. And this is a chart that he produces every week with his spelling words. Not the same words as these. Good. You are awake. Good to hear. But my son goes to this website. It's called Wordle. And Wordle produces a chart, and the words get bigger the number of times they occur. For this chart here, I took the 10 top predictions for 2015 and put them all into a Wordle because it gives us a very easy way to look at the big words. So the big groups out there that people are concerned about. Malware was the number 1 word. Botnets was the second. Compromised accounts was number 3. Internet of Things was pretty far down. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Internet of Things, having IP addresses for everything in the whole world. What's going to happen with that? My wife now has a meter that she uses every day that has wireless communication that goes back and forth. Luckily, it's a read-only source. It does not change anything for her, but it could give her bad output. That could be really bad for her. APTs, again, somewhat low, but at the same time, how bad is an APT? What do you do with an APT? Okay, so we're going to talk about the big boys in this group. Malware. What is malware? Everybody loves the term malware, right? Anything that doesn't do what I want, it's malware. That's what everybody likes to use it for. It's a catch-all term. In quarter 2 of 2014, there was almost 115,000 different instances of malware that was detected. Again, how many were not? I'm sorry, 115 million. Sorry, I was off by a couple decimal points there. 3.5 million basically were against financial sector. Of course, because that's where you control the money, be able to do a lot of things with it. So how do you detect malware? Again, it's based on hashes. What if I change a bit in that malware? And I believe Ben, who's sitting back here later, is probably going to do some good fuzzing type things. There's a little bit of discussion and how you pad vulnerabilities in his discussion. He's saying no, so that's definitely a yes. Behavior-based detection. How many people have seen malware behavior-based detection? That's where the real future is. But how do you detect it? What does it do? How much overhead does it take to detect it? In DoD world, which I imagine several of you people are here from DoD world, you have HBSS. You do application whitelisting, application blacklisting. How successful is that? It depends on how it works. Is it based on a hash? What if I create another executable that has the same name, has the same hash? What if you do it just based on name and path? If I can replace a binary that you expect there, then I could win. One of the things we saw around this time fairly heavy was certain malware instances that were using explorer.exe calling SBC host.exe on Windows machines. Microsoft has stated that that's not really what should be happening. You should not see explorer.exe calling SBC host.exe. So we turned it on to see what would happen. We found a couple of instances of it. All the instances we found were malware related. But what are you going to do with it? Is whitelisting malware or whitelisting the malware silver bullet? I don't think so, because if you're in a development environment, how do you update what that developer's doing next? If I tell it that I have to whitelist every single application, then they can't create their new program and run it. They create a new A.out and it won't run. Then they call you and have to get it set up. Compromised accounts. In educational arena, this is one thing that I deal with hugely because people like to respond to phishing emails. Oh, my account's going to be disabled in 2 days if I don't respond to this. Here's my username and password. Because nobody in the real industry is going to ask for your password to keep your account. They may ask you if you really do use the account, but they're not going to ask you for your password. Over 600,000 compromised account logins on Facebook per day. That's one every 140 milliseconds. That's a huge number to think about. How do you detect that? How do you handle that? To think about their servers or even handling that number of logins, much less that number of compromised logins, is huge. 18.4% of people know that someone has compromised at least one of their online accounts. Again, is that really accurate? Is people admitting to what it is? Is that really happening? And how did they actually get that account compromised? Most likely it's phishing, from what I've seen. Again, I broke the laser pointer. Apparently I've got to stop playing with it. PlayStation Network. Big attack in 2007, 77 million compromised accounts. Zappos, 24 million compromised accounts. And research shows that 23% of people provide credentials to phishers. I hope that's not true of people in the room. And I hope it's really not true, but that's what research shows, is that if you do a phishing campaign against uneducated people on it, and by educated into phishing attacks, 23% will respond to it. What does a phisher do with it? Here's a perfect example of how it works, And I love this right here. So we have this, they send this email to the person responds, gives them the password, the person uses that, goes to the bank, and takes their bag of money. Is that what happens? Sometimes. But it's a good way to look at it. The phishing targets by country I find very interesting. I don't know if you can read the slide on what it is, but the big blue area is the United States. So if you start thinking about the amount of phishing out there, it's going against us. Why is it going against us? Because it's working, and they're getting this bag of money. Maybe that's Facebook information or bag of money. Who knows? But still, to get you counts. United Kingdom is the next one up. Canada is the green sliver. And if you look at the little gray sliver here, that's other countries. So in this case, what do we have to do? We don't have to outrun the attackers, right? We have to push everybody else down to outrun them. I'm somewhat joking, but that's the story of the bear, right? You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the other guy with you. Most risks tie back to people not having the knowledge of security. They don't understand why security matters and the willingness to take the steps to secure and overall being good stewards of what data they have access to. This last statement is why I get to where I am today on it. Technical security controls are easy. We can secure computers. Getting people to be secure, it's hard because it's things they don't want to do. And before I go into who are people, I'm in that group too. So don't feel like I'm standing up here preaching about it. I'm in the group too with it. People like to overshare the information they have. If you ask somebody for something, they want to give you an answer. They lack the awareness of how to secure the IT resources. How many people at home know how to secure what they have at home for equipment? Very few. They don't consider security, or it's an afterthought. In a lot of cases, that's a big problem to actually go add security on afterwards. Instead, we need to be designing security into everything we do. I was talking to a gentleman in the room earlier about secure coding. To me, secure coding is really where the future holds, because the more secure the code is, the less holes we have to fill in the end. Now, does that mean we have to architect it well? Yes, we still have to architect it well. We can take a bad or a great product and architect it in a bad way. We have to avoid doing that. People want what is easy, what's fast, what's fun, what's free. They don't want to have to go out and do the hard work on it. They just want to be able to use what works and what's easy. One of the things I find very interesting, and I believe somebody has a presentation on it later today, is all of these different social media sites. It's scary to think about how big that diagram there is of, what people are using. And we only really ever talk about the top row. Hardly ever get past that when we start talking about vulnerabilities out there. So the person problem, who is it? It's everyone. System administrators, network administrators, software engineers, IT architects, security staff, administrators. I'm certainly fall in this category. I'm one of the problems because I want what's, easy, fast, fun, free. Of course, everybody wants that, right? In the case of, propping doors open, again, I've found data centers and other facilities that should not be left open, but it's easy. I'll tell you, this morning I ran up to my truck to grab something, and I knew the door locked behind me, and I thought I should have propped that, right? But we shouldn't prop it because that's bad security. But it just meant somebody had to get up and come let me in, and I feel bad about that. But at the same time, what are you going to do with it? A new Apple Pay, what's going to happen with that? It's easy, right? But is it secure? Has it been tested yet? What do you do with it? Badges. This is one of my pet peeves, is badges out in public. I've worked for a lot of different government organizations that the people who work in there do not want to wear their badges around the office because people should know who they are in their minds. So I don't need to wear my badge because they know who I am. But as soon as they get ready to go out to lunch, they'll strap on their badge that says they're a government employee. And then they go out to eat somewhere. What can we gain from that badge? What do we know? Probably has an RFID in it that would be very interesting for us to make a copy of without even touching the badge. But at the same time, we now know who our target is sitting at the coffee shop or sitting at Nukes or wherever we're eating lunch. Am I interested in the person who works for this company or the federal government or this company? Gives me a good way to target them and see who they are, start monitoring the patterns, start following them, start learning about them. Most likely the conversations may be of interest to me at lunch and may gather other information. So, we have this problem. Would we have all of these things if people had thought about it and secured it in a secure way and thought about it with security concerns? Would we have malware infestations, compromised accounts, spam, insider concerns, bring your own device issues, software vulnerabilities, poorly designed security systems? Yes, we would still have these problems when people start thinking more secure. But would we have as many? Probably not. It'll probably be a lot more reduced from there. So what do we do? I'm sitting here saying all kinds of negative things about what we're doing, but the fact is we have to keep doing what we're doing because we're trying to outrun that bear. So we have to keep doing it. The user education is the key. The earlier, the better. And there's some high school students in the back over here that are the future that I'm looking towards. These are the kinds of guys that, and no offense to you guys, look into the younger ones too, because they're going to be better than you guys. You guys are going to be better than us, and they're going to be better than you, hopefully. And hopefully it'll keep going that way. The earlier we can get this into the mindset, the better off we are. Yesterday, ISSA housed a Capture the Flag event in this room and a training on security topics. And we actually had middle school students who were here, and that worked out great. We had a lot of professionals, some who are here today, who broke up into groups with these middle school students and showed them what they know of security. And they actually got information back from the students to them. The penetration testing physical and also social engineering the students did was far better than the professional side of it. The students did a great job with that. It shows their mindset of where they're going. Huntsville is doing much better than the rest of the U.S. There is a few shining stars in computer security around for young education. Huntsville is one of those. The places I've lived before coming to Huntsville did not have this in middle school to where they're actually spending time talking about computer security. Security should be as common to us as math. So if I ask somebody what 2 + 2 equals, you're going to respond instantly with somewhere between 3 and 7. But you're going to know that answer. The problem with security is when you go to design an Active Directory or whatever infrastructure you're going to use for your security and your work at the office, you're going to go talk about how to set this up to make it functional. Then, if you have time, as Paul was talking about, you've got to get those cycles in to get the money, but then when you have time, you come back and secure it. Instead, and I think that way too. Instead, we need the groups that are going to not be thinking that way. We need the groups who are going to be thinking about secure and functional at the exact same time and putting that together. And that's where the earlier we get that education into them, the better they're going to be at doing that, in my opinion. And by the way, I'm open to negative feedback. If anybody disagrees, I certainly want to hear about it because it's a very interesting topic to me. The next generation needs to be better than us at doing what we're doing. If they're not, we're in really bad problems. DoD and federal government agencies, NASA included in this, force compliance with their regulations, but they don't force security. But at least with their compliance, users are educated, or at least have that opportunity for the education. And, someday, hopefully, we have this nice little security button on our keyboard. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Where they can evaluate whether or not what we're doing is secure or not. As of today, that doesn't exist. So, interesting topic for me. This happened in December of 2009. A gentleman named Thomas Ryan created an online account in the name of Robin Sage. Are you guys familiar with this case of what happened? So he was trying to show that you could exploit people based on their trust on gender, occupation, education, and friends. And he did this test to say, what can you find out about people online? Who can you make acquaintance with? Doing things like LinkedIn, Facebook, other organizations like that. And he got in with hundreds of connections to NASA, DoD, military intelligence, and Global 500 corporations. And he got offers of gifts, jobs, and speaking engagements as Robin Sage, who's up in the upper right-hand corner. By the way, Robin Sage is a real person, as you can see in the picture. We'll talk about her in a minute. And Thomas is the guy down here on the bottom. The interesting fact to me is that he got all these connections. He did it in about 100 days. He did it very, very quickly. And if you think about that, he just had to get the ball rolling with connections. How many people will do those kinds of things on their own? How many of those do you know that are in your network that you don't really know well and are actually in that kind of a world, just doing testing? In this case, he was a security professional. He just wanted to prove that he could do it or not. And they both showed up at DEF CON to do a speech on it together, which is interesting. So I don't have much of a presentation or length for today. This is what I had, but also I want to talk a little bit about Capture the Flag and the education of students. You guys have any questions, thoughts? I'm interested to hear what people have to say. I like being interactive. I should have said that earlier. So please heckle, question, whatever. Okay. So I'm going to switch for a second. Uh-oh, maybe I'm not. Okay, so I'll switch back. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And so yesterday we had this capture the flag, and I'd like to, be thankful to Team 1 back here. They won yesterday and did a great job of winning the capture the flag and educating the students and teaching the students about what's going on out in the real world and teaching them how to secure themselves. So to me, the real answer to this, I'll go saying, is that we have to teach these younger group in the back here and the even younger than that how to secure things, how to think securely. And it has to become one of those known traits. If you start thinking about any of the martial arts, it's repetition. It's how you learn how to do it. You talk to law enforcement. They talk about having to learn how to draw their gun and know exactly what they're going to do. It becomes muscle memory to them. And that's where our professionals have to get. And it has to be all of the group, not just the security professionals who do it, because people think it's the security professionals. But if you don't get all of these groups involved in it, they won't get there. With that, I guess I'm going to turn it back over to Paul. Or did you want to break, Paul? Awesome. So we will have a break. If you have any questions or you want to talk about offline, please proceed.